My advice on anyone wanting to write about place is don't try too hard. Let the place names speak for themselves. Let the descriptions of geology and buildings tell us about the character of a place. And remember that you may not be wanting to write about the place. You may be wanting to write about the people of that place.
I think my advice for a poet of place is to be attuned to their own bodily presence, how it is to live in the body, how they speak, how they exist in a space. And I think that attunement, that presence is what really transfers your experience of being in a place to someone else, so that we as readers can pick up your small kind of impressions from being in a space. And I think your impressions of a place are likely to be different to someone else's, and so being attuned to that brings out what is individual about your own perspective and your take.
Yeah, my advice would be to get out there in place, and I think writing outdoors, kind of on plain air, is a really useful practice in absorbing and also listening to other people's voices, and even voices of non-humans, birds and so forth, and getting a really first-hand experience of the place.
Don't worry too much about the place. I think that it's a myth that we need scenery. Approach a place with an openness and expect to find things, and just remain sort of receptive to what you might find, rather than kind of trying to look for something immediately spectacular.
What I would ask myself is, what do I know? What factual information do I have at my disposal? What do I think? What have I inferred about my experience or others' experience of this place? And how do I feel about it? And what are the differences between knowing, thinking and feeling? What are you going to emphasise? How are you going to select material?
I think good poems usually come about from, there's something which kind of snags, or which your mind, your conscious mind snags on, that you kind of keep returning to. It might be like an image, it might be a memory, it might be something you've seen, something that someone's told you. And I think pursuing that kind of random stray thought is often where good poems come, and often when you pull at those threads, these other things unravel. Usually they end up being poems about place.
I think really good writing about place has a unique quality which situates an individual or an individual lived experience in the context of a landscape which other people can experience. And then when you read really good writing about place, you can feel yourself in that place through somebody else's eyes and experience it afresh, and possibly even be inspired to go to that place and interpret it yourself creatively. I think really good writing about place does that and pulls you into a feeling of a landscape, something that Wordsworth did brilliantly, but which we hope that new poets today can do just as well.
For me, part of it is thinking about the idea that a landscape is not owned by anyone, but people move through it and have certain resonances in that space, and trying to think about what my resonances are.
I think one of the things that's unique about poetry is that it's almost like all the, I guess what you might call like deictic information, like the how, why, what, where, is almost compressed in the voice of the poem. So a poem conveys a sense of place almost without, just immediately. It kind of communicates before being understood in this really unique way. It's hard for me to imagine what a placeless poem would look like. I'm kind of interested in poems which are self-aware, which are interested in exploring and kind of like unraveling the threads between self, a self and the environment in which it's based.
What makes a good poem about place? Obviously it depends on the place and it depends on the poem. You need something that gives a sense of the place as existing in time, undergoing slower and faster alterations. Something which makes use of the language of place names, particular local usages and so on, traditions, mythologies, bugbears and so on is also useful, I think.
That on the surface you just think, you go there and write about what's there, but of course every space demands a different kind of writing. It often it has already its own kind of languages attached to it. Good writing about place, I think, involves doing more than just kind of representation. I think if you go to somewhere and you're sort of merely interested in describing it, then you're not really engaging with kind of like how we inhabit and occupy spaces anyway, which is in part kind of like foregrounding and reducing them by our own kind of movement through them. Every time you you apply language to something as well, you're also kind of reducing it, you're putting it in these terms. So I think good writing about place kind of notices things, but also acknowledges its noticing and acknowledges that the kind of eye wanders and creates a story through its wandering rather than taking in a whole. I don't think you can take in the whole of a place. So I think it's having a sensitivity to yourself as an agent moving through it, and acknowledging the necessary limits of that and working with those limits.
I think place and landscape and those kind of concepts and themes often are in kind of a synonymous or associated with background and with setting in which something more exciting happens. But in this project, place and landscape are kind of the objects of interest and of scrutiny. So I think a good poem would really draw attention to a particular place, possibly question some of those terms, what a place is, where the boundaries of place, heritage and identity might be, and just kind of do justice to someone's own subjective interpretation of place, heritage and identity as well.